Wife demanded marriage benefits without marriage duties, so I gave her exactly what she gave me. The 47,000 credit card bill arrived on the same day my wife told me she didn't sign up to be a housewife. What she didn't know was that I'd been documenting every financial transaction, every broken promise, and every one-sided expectation for the past 6 months. By the time I was done implementing my reciprocity plan, she'd be begging to be that housewife she claimed to despise. Let me explain how a marriage built on mutual love turned into a masterclass in strategic psychology. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one. It started 3 years into our marriage when I noticed Victoria had stopped pretending to care about our partnership. The shift was gradual at first. Missed dinners became the norm. Household chores became my responsibility, and intimacy became a reward system she controlled entirely. But the breaking point came on a Tuesday night that changed everything. I'd worked a 16-hour shift at the hospital. I'm a nurse manager, so long days aren't unusual, but this one had been particularly brutal. 3 emergencies, 2 staff shortages, and one family crisis that required me to stay late for documentation. I texted Victoria throughout the day, letting her know I'd be home late and asking if she could handle dinner since she'd been home all day. Her response was a thumbs up emoji. When I finally dragged myself home at 11 p.m., I found the house dark, takeout containers scattered across the kitchen counter, and Victoria in bed scrolling through her phone. "Hey," I said, exhausted. "Sorry I'm so late. Crazy day." She didn't look up. I noticed the dishes from her lunch were still in the sink, along with coffee cups from what appeared to be the entire week. The laundry I'd asked her to fold was still sitting in the basket, wrinkled beyond repair. "Did you get a chance to handle any of the housework?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. That's when she finally looked at me, rolling her eyes with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure annoyance. "I didn't sign up to be a housewife," she said, turning back to her phone. "I have my own life, you know." I stared at her, processing what I just heard. Victoria worked part-time at a boutique, 20 hours a week maximum, while I worked 50-plus hours maintaining our household income. Yet somehow contributing to our shared living space was beneath her. "I'm not asking you to be a housewife," I said carefully. "I'm asking for partnership." She scoffed. "Partnership? I'm your wife. My presence should be contribution enough." That sentence hung in the air like poison gas. "What exactly do you think you contribute to this relationship?" I asked, genuinely curious about her answer. She sat up, looking genuinely offended by the question. "I contribute plenty. I go to your work events. I maintain my appearance so you have an attractive wife. I haven't cheated on you. I put up with your long hours and your stress. That's more than most wives do." I stood there, listening to her list fidelity and basic companionship as special favors she was doing me. And something fundamental broke inside me, not my heart, my illusions. She continued, "Besides it, you make way more money than me. It only makes sense that you handle the bigger responsibilities. Like all the household management, cooking, cleaning, and emotional labor?" "Exactly. You're better at that stuff anyway." That night, I slept in the guest room, not because we'd fought, but because I needed space to think clearly about what my marriage had become. I spent the next day at work creating what I would later call my reciprocity documentation. I made a spreadsheet listing everything I contributed to our relationship versus what she contributed. The disparity was staggering. My contributions, 85 of income, 90 of housework, 95 of meal planning and preparation, 100 of financial management, 100 of home maintenance, and roughly 80 of emotional labor in our relationship. Her contributions, 15 of income, occasional social media posts featuring our life together, attendance at events that benefited her socially, and sporadic intimacy that came with increasingly specific conditions. But here's where Victoria made her crucial mistake. She'd told me exactly what she valued, receiving benefits without providing equivalent investment. I decided to give her exactly what she was giving me. The transformation started immediately, but subtly. The next morning I made breakfast. For myself. When she wandered into the kitchen expecting her usual coffee and eggs, She found me finishing my meal and preparing to leave for work. "Where's breakfast?" she asked, genuinely confused. "I made breakfast," I replied, washing my single plate. "For myself." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "But you always make breakfast for both of us." That was when I thought we were partners who took care of each other. Since you've clarified that marriage is about receiving benefits without reciprocal effort, I'm adjusting accordingly. I left her standing in the kitchen, still processing what had just happened. That evening, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, clearly having waited all day for an explanation. "Are you seriously not going to make dinner?" she asked before I'd even set down my keys. "Are you going to make dinner?" I countered. "I don't cook. You know that." I didn't know it was a permanent disability. I assumed it was a choice. Her face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. What's gotten into you?" "Clarity," I said simply. "I'm giving you exactly what you give me. Nothing more, nothing less." The first week was fascinating to observe. Victoria kept expecting me to come to my senses and resume my role as the sole maintainer of our household. Instead, she watched me cook single servings of meals, clean only my own dishes, and do only my own laundry. By day 3, she was eating cereal for dinner and re-wearing clothes because she'd never learned to operate our washer and dryer. "This is insane," she said, confronting me as I prepared my dinner. Grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, the aroma filling our kitchen while she stood holding an empty bowl that had contained her cereal dinner. "What's insane?" I asked, not looking up from my perfectly prepared meal. "You cooking for one person when you could easily cook for two." "You're right, I could. Just like you could easily clean for two people when you're cleaning for one, or do laundry for two when you're doing laundry for one. But you've made it clear that extra effort without reciprocation isn't appealing to you. That's different." "How?" She couldn't answer, and I could see the first crack in her worldview forming. The financial reckoning came at the end of the second week. For years, I'd been putting 80 of my salary into our joint account, while she contributed maybe 30 of her part-time earnings. She kept the rest in a private account for personal expenses, which apparently included 300 monthly on cosmetics and a 500 per month clothing allowance she'd assigned herself. I opened my own personal account and restructured our joint finances so that we each contributed the exact same dollar amount to household expenses. The rest of my income went into my personal account. "You can't be serious," she said, discovering the change when her usual shopping spree was declined due to insufficient funds. "I'm completely serious. You've taught me that financial independence is important in marriage. I'm following your example." "But I don't make as much as you." "Then perhaps we should adjust our lifestyle to match the income of the lower earner. Or you could consider increasing your work hours." The suggestion that she might need to work more than 20 hours per week was apparently offensive. "I like my schedule the way it is," she protested, "and I like keeping more of my income for myself. Isn't it wonderful when we both get what we want?" By the third week, Victoria's strategy shifted to recruitment. She started calling her mother, her sister, and her friends, painting me as a man who had suddenly become controlling and stingy. The calls all followed the same pattern. Victoria would describe her current situation while carefully omitting the years of imbalance that had preceded it. She'd present herself as the victim of my unreasonable new behavior, hoping for allies who would pressure me back into compliance. But I'd anticipated this move and prepared accordingly. When her mother called to lecture me about how to treat a wife, I listened politely before responding. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Chen. Can you help me understand something? In your marriage, did you contribute equally to household management? Or did you expect your husband to handle everything while you focused on your personal interests?" The silence was telling. "That's different," she finally said. "I was a full-time mother. Victoria isn't a mother, and she works part-time. So help me understand what contribution justifies her receiving full financial support and household management while providing minimal reciprocal effort." Another long silence. "Marriage is about compromise," she said weakly. "I agree completely. I compromised for 3 years by doing everything while she did whatever she wanted. Now she can compromise by contributing equally, or she can experience what it feels like to receive only what she gives." The call ended shortly after that. The same conversation played out with her sister, her best friend, and her father. Each time, when forced to articulate why Victoria deserved benefits without responsibilities, they struggled to provide compelling arguments. But Victoria's nuclear option was still coming. 4 weeks into my reciprocity experiment, she deployed her ultimate weapon, sexual manipulation. For months, intimacy had been sporadic and transactional. She'd use it as a reward for particularly expensive gifts or special favors, withdrawing it whenever she was displeased with something I'd done or failed to do. Now suddenly she was initiating regularly, but with transparent motives. "I've been thinking," she said one evening, wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. "Maybe we've both been a little stubborn lately. We should get back to normal." I appreciated the effort, but the timing was too convenient. "I'm flattered by the attention," I said gently, "but I think we should resolve our fundamental compatibility issues before resuming physical intimacy." Her expression shifted from seductive to shocked to furious in about 3 seconds. "Are you rejecting me?" "I'm suggesting that sex shouldn't be a negotiation tactic." "I can't believe this. You're punishing me by withholding intimacy." "Actually, I'm just not rewarding manipulation. When our relationship dynamic becomes healthier, physical intimacy will follow naturally." That's when she said the words that revealed everything I needed to know about her true priorities. "Fine. If you want to act like we're roommates instead of married, then I'll start looking for someone who appreciates what I bring to a relationship." The threat was designed to terrify me into submission. Instead, it provided perfect clarity. "That's your choice to make," I said calmly. "But if you're looking outside our marriage for appreciation, then our marriage is already over." She stared at me, clearly expecting panic, begging, or negotiation. When none came, uncertainty flickered across her face for the first time. "I didn't mean that," she backtracked quickly. "I'm just frustrated." "I understand. Change is difficult, especially when you're accustomed to receiving much more than you give." The next morning, I found her making coffee for both of us. It was a small gesture, but significant. The first time in months she'd done something for me without being asked or prompted. "Thank you," I said, accepting the mug. "Maybe we could talk tonight?" she suggested, her voice softer than it had been in weeks. "About finding a balance that works for both of us?" For the first time since starting my reciprocity experiment, I felt a flicker of hope. That evening's conversation was the most honest we'd had in years. Victoria admitted she'd gotten comfortable letting me handle everything while she focused on her own preferences. I acknowledged that I'd enabled the imbalance by not addressing it earlier. "I don't want our marriage to be a business transaction," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I also don't know how to be the partner you need me to be." "Neither of us knows how to do this perfectly," I replied, "but we could learn together if we both commit to trying." Over the following weeks, she began making genuine efforts, small at first, doing her own laundry, contributing to meal preparation, taking initiative on household tasks without being asked. I responded by matching her efforts, creating a positive feedback loop instead of the negative one we'd been trapped in. But the real test came 2 months later. Victoria's college roommate was getting married, and Victoria desperately wanted to attend the destination wedding in Hawaii. The cost would be substantial: flights, hotel, new outfits, gifts, and activities. In the past, she would have simply announced her plans and expected me to fund everything while she made none of the arrangements and took no responsibility for the expenses. This time, she approached it differently. "I know this is expensive," she said, showing me the estimated cost she'd researched herself. "I was thinking we could split it evenly, and I could pick up extra shifts at work to cover my half." The fact that she'd done the research, proposed equal contribution, and offered to work more to fund her portion showed a fundamental shift in her thinking. "That sounds like a reasonable approach," I agreed. "I appreciate you thinking it through and proposing a fair arrangement." We went to Hawaii together, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were actually partners sharing an experience, rather than me funding her vacation while she dictated the terms. But the biggest transformation became apparent when we returned home. Victoria had started working 35 hours per week instead of 20. She'd taken over several household responsibilities entirely: laundry, grocery shopping, and weekend meal prep. She'd begun contributing 50 of our household expenses instead of the 15 she'd managed before. Most importantly, she'd stopped treating our marriage like a service she was entitled to receive and started approaching it as a partnership she needed to actively maintain. "I owe you an apology," she said one evening as we cooked dinner together, something that had become our new routine. "I didn't realize how much I'd been taking advantage of your willingness to do everything." "I owe you an apology too," I replied. "I should have addressed the imbalance years ago instead of letting resentment build." "What changed?" she asked. "What made you finally stand up for yourself?" I considered the question carefully. I realized that letting someone take advantage of you isn't love, it's enabling. And enabling someone to be selfish doesn't help them grow into their best self. She nodded thoughtfully. "It's embarrassing to admit, but I liked being taken care of without having to reciprocate. I thought I'd found the perfect arrangement." "What changed your perspective?" "Experiencing what it felt like to receive only what I was giving. It was lonely and unsustainable. I realized I didn't want to be in a relationship where I was just taking advantage of someone's kindness." A year later, we renewed our vows, not because our marriage had been in crisis, but because we wanted to celebrate what we'd built together. The ceremony was small, focused on the commitments we were making to each other, rather than the party or social media opportunities. In my vows, I promised to communicate my needs clearly, rather than expecting her to read my mind, and to address problems directly rather than letting resentment build. In hers, she promised to contribute actively to our partnership rather than passively receiving benefits, and to appreciate effort rather than taking it for granted. The transformation in our relationship was remarkable. We'd gone from a dynamic where I gave everything and she took everything to one where we both gave generously because we both felt appreciated. But the most important lesson came 6 months after our vow renewal, when Victoria's sister asked for marriage advice during a family dinner. "The key," Victoria said, "is remembering that marriage isn't about finding someone who will take care of you. It's about finding someone you want to take care of who also wants to take care of you." She looked at me across the table. "I used to think love meant never having to contribute because someone who really loved me would give me everything I wanted without expecting anything back. That's not love. That's parasitism." "What's love then?" her sister asked. "Love is wanting to give your best effort to someone because their happiness matters to you, and knowing they feel the same way about your happiness." As I listened to her explain to her sister the principles that had saved our marriage, I realized something profound. My reciprocity experiment hadn't just changed Victoria's behavior. It had helped her discover what kind of person she wanted to be. The woman who had once told me that her presence should be contribution enough had become someone who actively looked for ways to contribute. The woman who had dismissed household responsibilities as beneath her had become someone who took pride in maintaining our shared home. The woman who had treated our marriage as a one-way benefits package had become a true partner. But perhaps the most telling moment came 2 years after my reciprocity experiment began. We were at a dinner party where several couples were complaining about their relationships. The wives were criticizing their husbands for not doing enough around the house. The husbands were frustrated about feeling unappreciated despite working long hours. Victoria listened for a while before speaking up. "I used to be the wife who expected everything while contributing as little as possible," she said, surprising everyone with her honesty. "I thought marriage meant finding someone who would give me the lifestyle I wanted without me having to work for it." The table went quiet. "What changed?" one of the other wives asked. "My husband started giving me exactly what I was giving him," she replied. "Nothing more, nothing less. It was the most uncomfortable month of my life, but it was also the most educational." "That sounds manipulative," another wife said. Victoria shook her head. "It wasn't manipulation. It was clarity. He showed me what it felt like to be in a relationship with someone like me. Once I experienced receiving only what I was giving, I realized I needed to become someone worth being in a relationship with." She reached over and took my hand. "The best thing he ever did was stop enabling my selfishness and start requiring me to be a partner instead of a dependent." As we drove home that night, Victoria was quiet for a long while. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. "About how close I came to losing you," she said, "and how I almost missed out on discovering what it feels like to actually deserve someone's love instead of just demanding it." "You always deserved love," I corrected gently. "You just needed to learn how to give it." Today, 5 years after that pivotal night when Victoria told me she didn't sign up to be a housewife, we have the marriage I always hoped we could have. Not perfect, but balanced. Not without challenges, but with two people committed to facing them together. We both work hard at our jobs and at our relationship. We both contribute financially, domestically, and emotionally. We both appreciate what the other brings to our partnership instead of taking it for granted. Most importantly, we both understand that love isn't just a feeling you have, it's a choice you make every day through your actions. The 47,000 credit card bill that started this whole journey, Victoria paid it off herself, working overtime and taking on freelance projects to cover the debt she'd created. Not because I demanded it, but because she wanted to take responsibility for her choices. "I need to clean up my own messes," she said when she made the final payment. "That's what partners do." Sometimes people ask me if I regret the reciprocity experiment or if I think it was too harsh. I don't regret it for a second. It gave both of us exactly what we needed. Victoria learned what it felt like to receive what she was giving, and I learned that demanding reciprocity isn't selfish. It's necessary. More importantly, it showed both of us that we were capable of building something beautiful together when we both decided to invest in it. The marriage we have now isn't the one we started with. It's better, because now it's built on mutual respect, genuine appreciation, and the understanding that love is something you do, not something you demand. And Victoria? She never again told me she didn't sign up to be a housewife, because she discovered that being a partner, someone who contributes, who invests, who shows up, is so much more fulfilling than being a dependent who takes without giving. The reciprocity experiment taught us both that the best relationships aren't about finding someone who will give you everything you want. They're about becoming someone worthy of everything you receive and finding someone who feels the same way. That's a lesson worth 47,005 years of growth. And it's a lesson that transformed both our marriage and ourselves into the people we'd always had the potential to become. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.